All right, let's get into our last two moments. We're back with our fourth topic. Let's talk about sports, which is a sentence I never say.
The Raiders of the NFL.
And they play?
They play in Vegas now. They play football.
Football.
Yeah. They're professional football team. So I have to. We're back with another episode of the It's Personal podcast. I'm Christopher Adamson.
This is personal injury. It is personal.
We had two really great interviews. One with Peter Iowa, who runs Tycoon Sports and is now recently launching an app for student athletes, which is really cool, as well as a conversation with two student athletes over at UCLA, America Frias and Valerie Vargas, who are soccer players. What stood out to you from both of these conversations?
Probably the biggest takeaway, or the thing that stood out the most, was when the soccer player said that they think athletes would be hesitant to unionize.
There's also an argument then that as employees, you guys will be able to unionize, because in any other industry where there are employees, those employees can unionize and then kind of fight for their own rights against the employer or workplace, et cetera. How do you guys feel about student athletes potentially having the ability to unionize, to be able to advocate for yourselves?
I think the idea of student athletes becoming employees opens up like a whole new can of worms, like you said, because like being an employee, like it's not just like working for the school. Now it's like you're entitled to insurance, like whatever, like we can unionize, like whatnot. And I think the idea of it, like, okay, like we'd be able to advocate for ourselves and like work together to like kind of like get benefits for all. Like I think that would make things a lot harder. And also just like speaking from experience of being surrounded with student athletes, I'm sure there's some that would like love to do it, but at the same time, I don't know a lot of like student athletes who would be willing to like
risk it.
Yeah, or like I don't know, like do like put a whole lot into the idea of like, oh, like let's advocate for ourselves and stuff like that.
Because I think from my perspective, I'm more so of a union guy, right?
Well, it's because you watch The Gilded Age.
But I'm all about like people banding together because you have more power together than individually. So that's why you have unions in professional sports, right? Like pretty much every professional sport, like NFL, NBA, MLB, baseball, NHL, hockey, they have a union, because at a certain point, the players have to negotiate with the owners. And so how are we going to have the most amount of leverage in terms of our bargaining position?
It's collective.
We have to collectively get together and say, this is what we want. We put together a list of requests, right? Because on the owner side, they'll probably be like, oh, it's a list of demands, right? 'Cause you're talking about marketing, words matter, right? So like they put together a list of requests and say, this is what we want. The owners say, this is what we're willing to do. And you go back and forth. And then you have a new collective bargaining agreement, which, segue into what we'll talk about in a second. I think the WNBA collective bargaining agreement expires on October 31st. So now is like a pretty important inflection point, I would think, for the WNBA union and the women of the league to bargain on their own behalf, which is also why you saw at the WNBA All-Star game, they had the shirts that said, pay us what you owe us.
Yep.
So like, I think for me, just naturally being more kind of labor oriented, which is funny because I own a business. So, people be like, how are you labor oriented? But like, I'm always on the side of the people, right? Power to the people.
Yeah.
And I think unionizing gives the people power against the ownership or the corporation or the governing body or whatever. So I would think like for student athletes,
it was surprising to you. I didn't feel
unionizing would be a good thing. But I also think the fact that you can now, as a student athlete, get NIL money, that's probably undercut the need to unionize, because in the past, like they weren't getting NIL money. Like as a student athlete, it was illegal for you to get money, and it could mess up your amateur status. Like you wouldn't be able to play sports anymore, et cetera. But now as a student athlete, like you can have endorsement deals, you can get money. So it's like the incentive to unionize isn't as great because now you have access to money. So I think now the question really is
that enough? Also, it's so disparate between sports. I'm sure gender also plays a massive role there. I think my overall take on that point of view of not wanting to is I also think it's coming at a really tough age group. Like when you're 20 and you're playing sports at school and you have classes and you're tired and you're hungover and you got a final on Friday, it's like unionizing does seem like a lot of work. I do think it's different when that's your full-time profession that affects your future art. Like you just, you're not adulting in the same way. So I wonder if that plays a role in like that thought process, as well as like just what I also took away from talking with them was like how different it is from where they kind of sit in this almost like middle ground with like soccer, which is, becoming a lot more popular in the U.S. now. And our female soccer players are some of the best. Like, I mean, the U.S. Women's soccer team obviously way outplays the dudes. But they're still not like football players, right? Who are getting these like $5-6 million deals. They're transferring, which is a whole other problem or potentially a problem, at least for viewers who love college ball, right? That's what they call it.
Ball, yeah.
I guess it's the whole pay system, I think, is a really interesting microcosm, which obviously has its own issues outside of what's going on with the WNBA. So I guess looking back, can you kind of tell us what's going on with WNBA pay and why is that like a hot topic right now?
I mean, we could talk about that. I think before we get there, just to add a little bit more context, like in the past, there have been unionization attempts. Like I think it was the Northwestern football team.
Oh, college.
In college, yeah. Maybe like 10, 15 years ago tried to unionize.
So, but would you unionize as a school, as an interschool, as like the Big Ten, as the like, how would you choose
that's the thing. I think those players on that team were just trying to unionize as part of like, as Northwestern football players, right? But even before that, like back closer to when I was in college, which was 98 to 02, around that time, there was also an organization that was led by this guy named Ramogi Huma. And his thing was advocating on behalf of college athletes, not necessarily getting paid, but like getting money to be able to live, to be able to, buy food, and getting able to just provide for basic necessities, like that type of thing. Like that's what this was really born out of, was like when you have a scholarship, it pays room and board, right? But it's not like you have excess or extra money to like spending money to buy groceries or clothes or shop or whatever, like back then, right? So like back then, these players were like, we're generating at a D1 school with a prominent football program, we're generating so much money for the school, but we're not seeing any of it through ticket sales, concession sales, merchandise, right? Like there might be like, imagine being a student athlete, like a player on the football team, you go into Ackerman Student Union, shout out UCLA, go into Ackerman Student Union, and you go into the student store and you see your jersey that you wear on Saturdays for sale with your name, but you're not getting any money off that, right? And it's not necessarily like a greed thing. It's like, meanwhile, like I'm here struggling to try to, rub two nickels together to buy some Doritos out of the vending machine or something like that. And like, if I get injured, there's no guarantee that I'm going to have access to good health care, or after I leave school, what's going to happen with that?
Like the risk assessment
there was just like a lot of uncertainty with your health and your finances. And so when it comes to unionizing, like back then, up until recently, when like NIL came around, that was a lot of the concern. It was like, we don't even have money to exist. Like our health insurance and our health care isn't necessarily guaranteed, like those types of things. And I think now, because there is the prospect of NIL money and getting paid, it's kind of like washed out some of those prior things that would have been on like those lists of requests, right? Like back then, if we wanted to unionize as NCAA Division I football players, like this is what we want. Like we want fair pay, we want access to healthcare even after we leave. Like we want this or we want that. And so money might have been on that list, but if there's like 3 or 4 or 5 other things on the list, like now we get to this point where you have the opportunity to make NIL money. But what about these other things that are very salient to me as a student athlete that were on this list? Like, so I just think we can't allow the ability to now get NIL money to kind of like whitewash some of these other things that were important to these student athletes.
Because at the end of the day, NIL is still on you to get that.
You have to be a good enough player. Yeah. And so like not everyone is, you know, Juju Watkins or Shedeur Sanders or Arch Manning or like these prominent D1 athletes who are able to secure
and within
NIL money, like a lot of NIL.
That like is being prioritized for that kind of large endorsement. You brought up also salary. Did we talk about that in that conversation? I don't think so. Because if they're being salaried by the school, then they're considered employees of the school. And so that also gets into a gray zone. I think that,
like, again, there's people that when it comes to this issue are much smarter than I am. But from what I remember, like the nomenclature student athlete came around specifically so they wouldn't have to pay them. So you wouldn't have to characterize them as an employee of the school. And that also means we don't have to provide you with workers' compensation insurance. So if you get injured on the field, if we decide to give you health care, it's just like through our own good graces. But there's no mechanism or no system that you can go through to like get treatment like akin to workers' compensation.
But it'll be interesting watching, especially as we're seeing with all of these larger deals, like people transferring, like what other things other than money will they be asking for or being offered as they transfer to other programs. And maybe those things are being included, but it's going to be kind of every person for themselves energy.
So I think that's why a lot of people kind of feel like with this current NIL system, it's kind of like the Wild West where it's like someone can offer whatever, give you whatever. And like people are just like jumping around from school to school to school, which like even in my conversation with Peter, I said that was one of the things that like I don't like because it leads to, as a college fan, because I went to UCLA, so like I still cheer for UCLA, but like if there's less continuity among the teams and the players, like one of the things I used to like was being able to see like players on the basketball team, for example, stay together for multiple years, like try to win a title for multiple years, and just like being able to follow their progression over multiple seasons together. Yeah, exactly. But now it's just like somebody might be on the team for 1 year, they jump, they leave to another school for another year, leave to another school for another year. So it's like, I don't want to only cheer for the name on the front of the jersey, UCLA. Like I want to cheer for the name on the back. And if the name on the back is jumping from school to school to school, I'm less invested in watching the team from year to year as a fan.
Really, probably very dumb question. Is that not what happens in the NFL? Don't they all just jump around?
Well, in the NFL, like you sign contracts, right? So like in the NFL, you might sign a contract for like 4 years, 5 years. And then after that contract is up, you can renegotiate to stay, or you might get traded or whatever. But like generally players aren't just moving from team to team year after year after year.
So probably,
especially the best players,
the system of jumping around won't last as long if something like that ends up taking its place. If they're more contractually like part of their deal, right, is predicated on a time at the school. Or
but that might still be illegal. Like I don't know if you can contractually require somebody to stay at your school if I pay you this, and because I would think teams would do that if that were the case, right? And so I think there might be some sort of prohibition on like contractually mandating that in exchange
because
for
of
money,
this
you
weird
have to
student
stand at the
athlete
school.
Label.
Yeah.
Interesting. One thing I will say I really liked about the conversation you had with Peter was he talked about kind of building a brand and kind of building wealth for athletes as sort of a safeguard against the rest of their future, whether or not they continue playing or maybe they don't go to like, I don't know, there's multiple levels of major, minor leagues or whatever.
It depends on the sport, but yeah.
Sure. They don't sports forever. They can at least build a brand. They can make money. They can sustain themselves. And
while they're sporting.
Well, they often sport, you know. They play croquet. That would be fun. Where's like the school croquet? Like Heather's, we could.
That's in the UK.
Yeah, well, I would watch that.
Okay.
I bet the outfits would be way better. But I did really like his point about that being really critical for athletes at this time. Like, while it's a Wild West, take advantage of that and really build yourself up and think of yourself as a brand, as a business, and this is a unique time in your life.
Yeah.
Capitalize on that and think long term, which I don't think is often said to, 18 to 22-year-olds.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of pressure, But yeah, I really liked that POV. I thought it kind of gave them more wiggle room than having to be beholden to a sport that maybe isn't always going to be kind back to them. And also you can never control if you get injured or if something happens that you can't maybe bounce back from. So I thought that was a really positive outcome. That definitely surprised me. Was there anything that surprised you out of either conversation other than the not wanting to unionize?
Not necessarily surprised. Like I like the idea of athletes being more empowered and having the ability to make money, whether it's NIL or otherwise, and just be more in control of your own fate, right? Because I don't think the last thing you want to worry about as a student is money, right? Because especially if you're like a Division I student who's dedicating your life to your academics, of course, and your sport, you don't also want to have to think about like, how am I going to, eat or provide for myself or whatever. Yeah. So like, if you have the ability to start marketing yourself and capitalizing on that marketing and make money, why not? Like in America, for better or worse, like we're a capitalist enterprise. And so we value making money and being able to earn money and being able to earn money commensurate with your talents and your ability. So if you have the ability to start doing that,
it's interesting how in a lot of ways college sports really mirrors the NFL, like the larger, because like when you look at like, obviously I have limited sports knowledge, but like what most of them end up doing post NFL careers, or I think that's really the only one I know this transition happens in, but like film and TV, right? So they're already a market share, right? They're already a known presence at Dwayne The Rock Johnson, right? Like, and then, Travis Kelce was just in like Happy Gilmore too. Like they all make that sort of switch because it's like, well, this is the thing that I can, my image, my name, my likeness, my essence as a person, like that's the thing that's made me money up until now. So as I make this transition, how do I use that? So I think it's interesting that it's also kind of similar for college athletes, maybe not to that same degree, but like, how do you continually, how can you financially use that NIL past the time that you're an athlete?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Peter said, it allows you to take your persona and kind of your own personality into your own hands and start doing things with it. And so kind of to your point about oftentimes athletes like post-career transition into commentating, for example, or being some sort of talking head on TV. But what I also wanted to say is what you're seeing now, which is becoming more popular, is like current athletes having podcasts, right? So like these two guys, I think on the Knicks, Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, I think they have a podcast. Draymond Green, who plays for the Golden State Warriors, he has a podcast. Even Travis Kelce, because Travis Kelce still plays, right? He has a podcast with his brother, and his brother only retired, I think, like a year or two ago. So like you're seeing current athletes like maintain podcasts throughout the season, like have a media personality that they're cultivating like throughout the season. So it's really like, I think social media has been a big factor in that, and like the rise of podcasting, and it's allowing
like a
people
creator
to really,
economy. It allows
exactly
you to,
take ownership of yourself as a creator at like any point in your journey, and really seeing that explode.
Like empowering, like seeing, okay, this business was able to make money off of me as a creative entity, as a physical entity, and now I can do that as well, and I can self-distribute, and I can make my own way, just as they did. So I think it's important for people, or especially students, maybe in middle and high school, that are thinking of that same path, seeing like there's a lot of flexibility in what you can do now in a creator economy, which is cool. So I want to take it to the WNBA stuff. Again, I didn't really know anything about anything. I did know who Caitlin Clark was. So we got that one. But I think it also shows that as someone who follows zero sports.
Do you know any other WNBA player?
The one that went to Russia and got arrested. Brittany something. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
But I think the fact that you know Caitlin Clark,
right, that's what I was going to say.
Any other WNBA player speaks to the power of the marketing of her. Yeah. Because we were talking about marketing earlier. Yeah. And so that's like, she broke through to you, however that happened.
Exactly. And now, so the moment we're talking about here, right, is what is this conversation about pay equity in the WNBA, and why is it a little bit more complicated?
First of all, I think the WNBA has been around. Somebody could fact check it probably, but like 30 years, I want to say.
I do like that you wave to the side as if anybody here is here to. We have a team of fact checkers.
We do. We have.
Hey.
We have minions working in the basement. No. Yeah, I think it started like 30 years ago, right? And so it's not like it hasn't been around for like it's been around for a while at this point. And I think
how long has it been in relation to the NBA?
Yeah, that's what almost 30 years. Yeah. So but the thing with the NBA is that there also used to be the NBA and the ABA, and then they merged. And so I don't know if the ABA was older and then the ABA merged with the NBA. So there were two leagues at one point. But regardless, like the NBA basketball has been around for a long time. And
so WNBA is young-ish. It's a millennial. Yeah. But WNBA has been around for a little bit less long. And what is interesting about you were telling me earlier, there's like it is a part of the NBA.
Yeah.
Like it is owned by.
Actually, so the WNBA is owned by multiple entities, and I knew it was partially owned by the NBA, but I didn't know it was also partially owned by a couple other entities until recently. Like I was watching the Joe Budden podcast and they were talking about it. So I want to give credit where credit is due, because they did a real deep dive into
we will not be showing that clip because of copyright law.
Okay. But they did do a real deep dive into the WNBA, like the ownership of the WNBA, the finances behind the WNBA. So if anybody's interested, they can check that out there. But they did talk about how the NBA is an owner, and I think like two, I want to say like private equity firms or something like that also partially owned the WNBA, and the actual WNBA itself, like that organization, owns, I think, less than 50% of the WNBA. So in essence, less than 50% of the WNBA is owned by the WNBA. Yeah. So when it comes to revenue and revenue sharing, so like I'll take a step back. I'm also not like a revenue sharing financial expert when it comes to sports teams, right? But like for most, like the four major sports, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, right? So football, baseball, hockey, basketball.
I actually knew all of those.
Okay. What ends up happening is there's revenue sharing between the teams and the players. So under the collective bargaining agreement, so when the players and the owners come together, they decide how much revenue that's generated by the particular league is going to go to the players. Mm-hmm. And generally in those four main sports, it's around 50%. So of the revenue, and it gets way more complicated than that, but just like in broad strokes, 50% goes to the owners, 50% goes to the players. And out of that 50%, that's how salaries get determined, right? And salary caps and stuff like that. So
gotcha.
50% of the money is allocated towards the players for salary. So again, in those four major sports, it's roughly 50%, right? In the WNBA, when it comes to the revenue sharing, from what I understand, their revenue sharing is like 1/5 of the typical percentage of one of those four major sports, which if you do the math, that comes out to like 9.8, 10%.
So
right?
Is this then, so this whole Caitlin Clark WNBA pay equity discussion is like, their salaries are just so abominably low, especially in comparison to like your average rookie NBA.
Yeah.
Look, I said the word rookie. That was pretty cool. And NBA player, right? Like, so the average, I was just fact checking in the mo, and the average WNBA like player is like $102,000 to $106,000, right? Yeah. Which is like, they're not playing year round. No. They're not, so like often they'll have to like travel out of the country.
Overseas. Yeah.
And so
League Reiner. Yeah.
Going to Russia. Versus what's the average NBA salary? Wait, is that real? Is it $13 million?
That's not the average NBA salary. I think you want to look at, okay. That's the average rookie salary?
Average. Well, just average. I didn't look up rookie. I just looked up average.
The 24-25 season was 11.8 million. Wow.
So
the NBA.
That's a little different.
Yeah. Because you looked up the average WNBA player salary, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And so, like, if you were to look at that pie chart in terms of the revenue sharing, like
rookies start at $66K at the WNBA.
Okay.
Let's look at where rookies start at the NBA. And so this kind of, like, obviously when you just look at those sheer numbers, it's like, okay, there's a lot of inequity there.
But I think so that could also be a little bit misleading because you would also have to look at the revenue generated by the respective organizations, right? So I think what's the WNBA revenue last year? Probably like 200. What's that?
Ooh, the NBA.
Well, they lose money, right? But they still generate revenue. But then when you subtract all the expenses, they lose money.
Right.
So, because they've been in the red for a long time. So going back to also that, the Joe Budden clip, they talked about that. So like the first like 10 years or whatever, maybe even longer, that the WNBA was in business, they were losing money.
The WNBA or the NBA?
The WNBA. Yeah. I'm sure the NBA was too, right? Because all businesses I won't say all, but like most businesses, when you first start out, you're losing money for an appreciable period of time, right? Whether it's like 5, 10, maybe even 15 years, you're losing money, especially because any money that you do, quote unquote, make, you're putting it back into the business, right? But like most businesses in the startup phase lose money. So I'm sure in the beginning, the NBA lost money, right? Like in the beginning, the NBA, the finals, so like, when they play the finals, when they play for the championship, right? The NBA finals in like the 60s, 70s was on tape delay. They weren't showing those games live, right? They were showing them on tape delay. Like that's how bad the ratings were. That's how bad interest was. And then they had to figure out, how are we going to make this thing into a going concern that like the American fan base cares about? And then
marketing.
Lo and behold, at like whatever year that it was, there was Larry Bird, who went to Indiana State University, and Magic Johnson, who went to, I think it was Michigan State, because he's from Michigan, right? And so even the year before they came out in the NBA, their two teams met in the college final, right? And so like that storyline already existed, because you had this guy, Larry Bird, who went to Indiana State, who was from French Lick, Indiana, who was like this white country boy, right? Who like he had his share of fans, and then you had Irvin Magic Johnson, who went to Michigan State. I think he's from Detroit. So like quintessential, like kind of like Black American story, right? And then those two teams met in the college final, and Magic won. But even at that point, there was already like the storyline was like already baked in.
It's a great narrative,
especially because honestly, like in America, everything is predicated on race, right? So it's like, and it was like naturally like you had this white versus black thing, right? And so then they both came into the league the same year. Larry Bird ended up going to the Boston Celtics, who had this long history of winning already. Magic Johnson went to the Lakers, who were glitz and glamour, Hollywood, et cetera. And I think his very first year, I think he won a championship because he went to this team with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and a bunch of other like, really good players. And he won a championship. And so like from then on, it was kind of like this every season back and forth rivalry because they already had a rivalry, the Lakers and the Celtics, right? And so now you had these two young superstars who the NBA could like build the league on their backs.
It was like cult of personality.
Going to marketing, right. So like they filmed commercials together for, I think it was Converse. And they really played into it, right? And so the NBA really built the league off these two players. And so that's kind of what happened in the NBA was you had like a league that was kind of like middling that no one really cared about. And then these two players came in and really like lit a fire under the NBA.
And so now we're seeing that again with Caitlin Clark. And we're seeing that people really, hey, I know who she is. That just says so much. So I guess, like, are we at that pivotal change now with the WNBA? And then will they have that same power in collective bargaining? Will like that? I think that's going to be interesting to watch.
I mean, I think in terms of the money, like a large part of the disparity is going to be based on the revenue of the respective leagues, right? So we have to keep that in mind. But then even that aside, if in the NBA, the revenue sharing is like 50% to the players, but in the WNBA, the revenue sharing is like 10% to the players, that's a much smaller pool of money that you have to pay these players. And I'm not savvy enough and financially well-versed enough to know if part of that, the reason that number is at 10% is because there's so many other like majority owners in the WNBA, and the WNBA only owns like a minority percentage of itself. So then does that affect? Yeah, like it doesn't necessarily have the leverage or the negotiating power to allocate more of a revenue split to the players. Like that's way above my pay grade.
But
right?
should the sport blow up more, generate more, do marketing, make it cool to go to games?
There's a lot of people who go to games though. Like I don't know. I'm sure average
you see,
attendance
like, photos of like celebrities at a basketball game.
Yeah.
Is it a WNBA game? Is Jay-Z there front row with Beyonce?
Kobe, rest in peace. He was a huge WNBA fan. So that's like
good.
That's another big reason why to me his passing was so sad. It was like he was a real ambassador for the WNBA. Yeah. Right. And like he was there with his daughter and like it was a beautiful thing. And I think he was definitely someone who saw like the beauty in the WNBA and the game and how it's played, et cetera. And so I do think like the advent of not just Caitlin Clark, like of course Caitlin Clark did a lot to bring a lot of eyeballs to the sport, but like you have a lot of players that have preceded her who helped get it to that point. And then a lot of other contemporary players with her and players who are coming behind her who are going to continue to build on that and hopefully blow up the WNBA even more.
So that it then has the revenue to share.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, like I think some of that is also going to be based on how is that revenue generated? Like, is it ticket sales? What's the cost of the tickets? Like, what's the cost of concessions? Like, all these different factors that go into the revenue that's being generated. But I think at a very base level, you're seeing a level of interest in the sport that should kind of be commensurate with the revenue going up. And now it's just a question of, okay, like with this revenue that's being generated, whether it's with the NBA continuing to put money into the WNBA, whether it's I read an article that talked about there's more expansion franchises coming. So like new franchises are going to build more revenue as well, because they're going to bring more eyeballs, bring more players, build more revenue. And then those franchises, from what I read, like I think they have to pay like a $250 million expansion team fee. So like, I don't know if that money goes into
the
revenue
franchises,
for
you mean
what
more teams?
Yeah, more teams. Oh. Exactly. So there's going to be more teams that are coming. Like from what I read, I think the Golden State Valkyries is a WNBA expansion team that started this year. And then I think next year there's supposed to be 3 more expansion teams or something like that. And the price tag that those expansion teams have to pay, from what I understand, as an expansion team fee is $250 million.
To join
Yeah. So I don't know how that works, like if that money goes into the pot or where that money goes or whatever. But like if you're having expansion teams that are having to pay like such a hefty price tag, that's also an indicator of the value of these franchises, where the sport is going, et cetera. So I think there's no question they have to get paid more. It's just a question of like, how do we effectuate it? And that 10% in terms of the revenue sharing, how can we get that up to, maybe it doesn't jump up to 50% immediately, but maybe like, maybe it goes up and then we come up with a plan where it continues to incrementally expand over time.
Yeah. And then marketing.
So let's talk about marketing.
Make it fun. Do pop-ups. Like join the 21st century. But like make it a cultural thing that it's a fun thing to be a part of.
Yeah. I'm ignorant to what they're currently doing as marketing, so I can't just out of it. Okay, so apparently they're doing nothing for marketing. I know we talked earlier about individual players getting marketing deals, like Asia Wilson, Juju Watkins at USC, Caitlin Clark, right? And so like individual player, Paige Beckers, who's also a huge young talent. I think she came in this year. And so you have the talent, and you have individual players who are getting like individual marketing campaigns or pushes.
Right.
But I think your point is the league as a whole, what can we do to better market the WNBA?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and make it a more inclusive, like make it a thing that people want to go show up, because you're gonna drive a lot of sales by having more butts and seats. So,
yeah.
They know the tactics that work for the NBA to have people show up and be a butt in a seat, drive that. And I actually think what's interesting is I did work a while ago with like the Dallas Cowboys, and overall like their projections for like audience participation, like they will see decline in the incoming years. Like generationally, like we are seeing less enthusiasts as like football fans. So like that is a concern. A lot of like the NFL is already struggling with, like, I mean, not to always bring it back to Taylor Swift, but like there is a reason. I'm never actually really sorry to bring it back to Taylor Swift, but there is a reason that the NFL really, like, ESPN
showed her in the box at like every single game.
They did, but I mean, like ESPN themselves did a push notification about her engagement. Like they know that she generated hundreds of millions of dollars for them because more young girls went to the games. Like they just drove participation. And so marketing, like it's not that you only need Taylor Swift to be there, but like it should show you that like if I don't feel represented at a game, like I don't see myself at an NBA. Actually, I've been to a basketball game. I brought a book. It was boring.
But is that because you don't like sports, or because you feel like it wasn't marketed to you in a particular way?
I think both. I mean, I think I'm an exception. I don't personally find it. Basketball, I thought was a little bit more interesting. Football, I find is a snooze because they keep stopping, and it's so confusing.
A snooze.
It's a snooze. I only went to one UCLA game. I'm also go UCLA. I only went to one game, and I read the whole time. It's really boring. But basketball, I like more. Hockey, I like the most because there's like blood at least, so it's like interesting. So there's like body parts flying. I think I would have liked gladiator matches. I think that would have been my sport. But regardless, market it so that you feel seen as an audience, like make us want to go.
But also with to the Taylor Swift point, do you think that bump is sustainable, or is that like a one-time thing because of her, interest in that season?
I think we'll see in the next couple of years how much of a bump it was, because obviously I think he's leaving.
I think he doesn't really have too many more seasons left.
I think this is literally his last season.
Did he say that?
I think
I wouldn't be surprised.
So if it continues past that attendance, but I think like the biggest thing that I saw from that accidental marketing push was, a lot of girls and their dads bonding over something, and a lot of dads online coming out being like, now my kid wants to come to the game with me. And now it's like that could, but then that's going to, it's going to be more than just like I'm going for Taylor Swift. Now I'm creating a new memory and a new place to exist here with my dad or my uncle, or, it doesn't have to be such a gendered thing, but like, I think that's kind of what it has been. It is a really gendered experience. And like, I definitely, when I have had to go to sports games, like I do feel more isolated in that there's not as many women. And it doesn't necessarily feel like it's catered to women.
I will say, I know individual campaign, like, again, Asia Wilson has a campaign, Juju has a campaign, and we might say, well, that's good for the individual, but what about the WNBA? I do think in terms of marketing, like one of the smart things that the NBA did was encourage and prop up individual superstars. So even if, Michael Jordan has a shoe deal with Nike and now has Jordan brand shoes, or like so-and-so has a Gatorade deal, or this person has that deal, it still brings light to the league as a whole.
Totally.
So I think maybe there needs to be more of that, because I'm not sure how many teams there are in the WNBA, but like I'm willing to bet there's at least one quote unquote star player on each of those teams. So maybe we have to figure out how to get more of the other players more well known as well, aside from just Caitlin Clark or Paige Beckers or somebody. And then that brings more attention to the league as a whole, in concert with some of maybe the other marketing steps they can take to kind of prop up the league as a whole.
I think we just fixed women's sports.
They can
tune in.
Yeah.
We'll put together their marketing plan.
Put together a pitch deck.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Same thing, WNBA. Everyone should be impressed that I have not once mentioned Hamilton
until just this moment.
Yeah, but it's been on my mind. It's the 10th anniversary. It should be on everyone's mind.
Up as a society.
Wait, what was that?
We need to give Hamilton up as a society.
I think I'm with him. I never saw it, but nor do I really want to.
Why? Well, you could see it in theater September 5th. Obviously, you two are not theater kids at heart, and it shows.
That's for sure. Yeah.
It's a
That said with malice.
Yeah, intermission in the theater. There should be an intermission, like in the movie theater.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. There can be an intermission. But it's a great musical.
When you say theater, do you mean like with singing or just like stage acting? Because I like stage acting. I'm just, yeah.
Well, okay, singing and the concept of musical theater is actually the only original art form that America has invented.
The original art form that America
has
invented?
So musicals. Chris. We don't need it. We invented musicals. So operas and operettas, basically like Les Miserables is a operetta, where there is maybe 1 or 2 lines of dialogue, but it is primarily sung through, right? Like that kind of theater existed before, but musicals as we know them, like a Rodgers and Hammerstein's musical, right? Like the King and I or whatever, like that is actually original American theater that we brought back into the world. So something like Hamilton exists like from the American theater. I think that's pretty cool.
But are you saying that's the only form of art Americans have invented?
Invented? Yes. Well, I mean, there might be other pieces, but that is like the biggest export of theater that we have curated.
We invented the blues.
Well, that's not theater.
Oh, okay. That's why I said American art.
Oh, no. I didn't mean art. I just meant like in
right.
theater. Yeah. If you take theater history.
Old state?
No.
Okay.
We obviously invented many forms of music and.
Yeah.
Yes. But don't come from musical. What I'm saying is don't come from musical theater as an American.
I will say I did see Hell's Kitchen.
What is that? Is that a musical?
Yeah. The Alicia Keys musical.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. I haven't been in the theater scene in a while. I miss it, but. Okay. Yeah. Love Hamilton.
I give it like B-.
Hamilton is not a drag.
I watched it and I liked it. It's just, I'm not watching it again.
Because you learned so much. My 2 favorite things are history and musicals, so you put them together.
We are leaving this all in, by the way.
Oh, good. 6 the musical. We could all learn about Henry VIII. Come on. Yes. These aren't hot takes. These are just good takes.
I want to know how they make The Lion King into a musical. Like, are they wearing costumes?
Yeah. It's actually one of the most beloved long-running Disney musicals on Broadway.
They ran that on Disney Plus.
The Lion King? Or the Hollywood Bowl one?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That
one was a little rough.
I'm not I mean, the story it'd be really appealing for me to watch.
Yes. Yeah.
I watched Hamilton, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. These are our thoughts on theater. So coming back to
that's what the world has been waiting for.
The best segue of theater is that it is a great community. And the last thing I think we could end on from season 1 is in multiple ways. We've talked about community.
Yeah.
Whether it was in sports, whether it was in the constriction of civil liberties, or honestly the really personal pod conversation that you and Daniel had, how important community was.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask that podcast specifically, what stood out to you from that conversation?
I just appreciate everybody's vulnerability, Daniel, especially just because it can be difficult for people to open up about a lot of things, but especially addiction or problems with substance abuse. And so I think the more we can kind of sit here and be vulnerable and put our stories out there and hopefully inspire somebody, touch somebody, give somebody kind of like hold up a mirror to somebody so they can see I'm not in this alone, and they can see themselves reflected in somebody else and somebody who's been through it and come out on the other side better and stronger. I think that's important. And so that's really kind of what struck me the most about that conversation. I appreciate Dan for coming up here and telling his story.
Yeah. I think it's always brave to hear any aspect of somebody's addiction and recovery story.
Yeah.
But I think the courage he had to go into such detail, but I think that's like the details and specifics are where we find ourselves in stories.
Yeah.
Like usually the more specific, the more universal it is. Because we've all been at our own iteration of rock bottom.
Yeah.
And so I think it was really powerful to hear him talk about his rock bottom and then also look at where he's at today. I mean, he's literally a high-powered attorney. And that's amazing. But he did that through community.
Yeah.
And that was such a powerful thing to hear, because it is, I think, the most universal thing we could share on this podcast is the importance of community and how it can serve you in really dark times. And that's something I also wanted to connect back to our conversation with Marissa. Something that I thought that she said that was really amazing was, especially when she's day in, day out dealing with some of the most harrowing immigration cases imaginable, what do you do to take care of you?
Yeah.
And how do you self-care? And her answer was, I turn to my community, right? And I have good food, good drinks, good conversations, and I fill my cup with other people, and I rely on them. So whether you're dealing with something as huge as that, or, something much more personal, like community seems to be the salve for everybody. So I was kind of wondering what your takeaway from that in all these different conversations you've had over the season was.
Yeah, I just think oftentimes we don't appreciate what we have until it's gone. And I think for a lot of people, COVID was probably a stark reminder of how much we need people and how much we need each other. When we were all kind of locked in our own houses, apartments, whatever, and we had that taken away from us, I think it was, again, like a stark reminder of how much we actually really do rely on the communities that we do have, whether it's, your local gym or your dance class or your office where you go to work every day, like whatever it is, friends, family members. It's important to remember that none of us goes through life alone. And I think oftentimes, especially like when we're at that rock bottom place, we feel like we're alone and we feel like we don't have any community and nobody can understand what we're going through. But I like what you said about oftentimes it's the specific that is the most universal, because we think like, oh, I'm going through this thing and like nobody's ever been through this, but everybody's been through what we've gone through in some form or fashion. It might not be the exact same circumstances, but that emotional resonance that you're feeling in your soul, someone has felt that. And if you reach out and find people that you can rely on and find people who have been through what you've gone through, whether it's AA or some other group of people who have been through what you're going through, then you realize like you're not in this alone. And I think that's one of the most gratifying and uplifting feelings in life, is when you realize that you aren't alone. And, there's that old proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others, something to that effect, right? And so I think for me, especially, one of the things I've realized as I've gotten older is how much like life is a team sport, and how much like you might think you're an island and you don't need anybody. You can do everything yourself. You can be self-sufficient. When you find like the right people and the right person, it's like life just blooms and there's so much more color. And you realize I was dumb to think I could do all this on my own. Like I can lean on people and people can lean on me, and we can all lean on one another and we can all go far together. Yeah.
I think where I wanted to kind of leave this season, I guess, was you've almost demonstrated pieces of your own community here on the pod. What was that like for you to kind of play host for the first time and get to talk to members of your own community? Obviously almost everybody we interviewed to some degree was in the law profession. Like, what was that experience like for you?
I mean, I think just in broad strokes, hosting was like, it's a little bit getting my sea legs at first and just getting comfortable with doing this and sitting in this seat and kind of being a quote unquote host of a podcast. So that was a little bit different, but in life, I like to do things that push myself outside of my comfort zone and take on new challenges and do things that help me expand as a person. Because I think for me, I always want to feel like I'm progressing in life and never stagnating in whatever form that looks like. And so it was a challenge that was a little scary at first, but something that ultimately I'm super happy with how it turned out and how everything progressed. And I think we are going to put something out that's really special. And so that's been very gratifying. And then to bring people here from my community and hear their stories, it's just nice to really recognize parts of yourself in other people and see that like the passion that I have about certain topics, not just law, but like life or social justice or
right, like you found out
community
Saad was like Team Drake. That was life changing.
Well, Saad's been fired. No, but that's just it's really nice to see. People who are like as passionate as I am about certain things, and just see that kind of like reflected back in another person, I think is really cool. Because I do think that there's a through line between a lot of the people that we have in the office, like not just the attorneys, but other people that we have in the office as well. And so it's really nice to see that kind of firm ethos that we have at the top between myself and Alan is also like reflected in the people who, choose to work for us, because at the end of the day, they are choosing to work for us and with us. And that's a big undertaking. It's not something that somebody should take lightly. And so I'm happy the people we have in the office have chosen to work with us.
So season 2.
Yeah.
What are your hopes when you do a season 2?
Yeah.
What have you learned here that you want to move forward, and what are some things that you'd want to do differently, or guests you'd want to have, or conversations you'd want to have?
I mean, some of the things are just more of the practical, logistical stuff behind the scenes that the viewer doesn't necessarily see. But I think there's things that we can do to kind of, tighten up the podcast and tighten up the broadcast and just make ourselves more efficient, which obviously we'll talk about internally and in-house. But that stuff I think is all small stuff too. It's easy stuff. Some of it is just stuff on my end as well. But that aside, I just, want to continue. If season 2 was very similar to season 1 and we just brought on more even just attorney guests and I sat with interesting attorneys, maybe even in other fields, I would be happy with that. If we brought on different types of guests from different fields, maybe an orthopedic doctor or somebody in a completely different, unrelated field to law who just has an interesting story to tell, that would be cool. If, we managed to get a guest who was some sort of personality, a media personality or I don't know, actor, actress, whatever. I think the door should be open to anybody who wants to come sit here or has a desire to come sit here with an interesting story to tell, who just wants to talk about his or her life journey.
Something
right?
personal.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, it's personal. And so it doesn't always have to be about the law, right? I think one of the coolest things here is just hearing people's personal stories, hearing their makeup and how they got to where they are and what's influenced them, what they're passionate about. Because I think the more we can tell just stories about people and about humans and the human experience, the more we can inspire people. I think at the end of the day, that would be my ultimate goal for season 2, is just to inspire people more in whatever way we can.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What was one thing from Gen Z culture that you remember that we've talked about on this pod?
What's Gen Z? What age group is that?
So nothing at all. It's 97 to 2012, 2010, 2012. Yeah.
97.
So when we had on, I would ask you some fun pop culture questions at the end. A lot of them were Gen Z themed. Because I'm a pathetic cusper that's always not trying to be a millennial. Yeah, rub it in. I know. I'm a zillennial. I'm a zillennial technically. Yeah, because both generations deny me.
I remember when you said, "What do you think you're the GOAT at?"
Okay.
That was one, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
we got one.
Yeah.
And what does GOAT mean?
Greatest of all time. That predates millennials.
Okay,
you guys didn't invent that.
Giving you something.
LL Cool J has an album called GOAT.
Do you remember what Roman Empire was?
Oh, it's like something you're obsessed with, right? Like that's my Roman Empire. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you say your Roman Empire was? I don't remember.
It's probably the Gilded Age. Honestly.
No, it wasn't. That was Gilded Age was new. It was something else. I thought it was.
Maybe it was White Lotus. Yeah, season 3, White Lotus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we got 2 for 2. And then lastly, these are obviously really bleak times that we live in.
Yeah.
What are you watching, reading, listening to that's been either comforting or at least entertaining?
I mean, I'm a huge hip hop fan. What I will say, one bright spot this year has been to me the return of like good hip hop albums. And so for me, what really kind of probably started that off is the Clips album, their new album, Let God Sort 'Em Out, right? Like that album to me was impeccable. It's phenomenal. They recorded it in Paris with Pharrell because Pharrell, the creative director for Louis Vuitton Men's, has a studio that he's built in Paris, in Louis Vuitton.
Oh, cool.
And so the Clips came there and recorded. That's where they recorded the album for like a year and a half. They flew over there and recorded the album.
What a hardship.
And so, yeah.
They were like, it's actually, we need one more song.
Pusha T actually said in an interview like he didn't like living there. So, you know, that.
It's like not liking Hamilton. It's just bananas.
But I think the album speaks for itself. Like that album is amazing. The Chance the Rapper actually put out a new album that's really good.
He played UCLA.
Yes.
Chance the Rapper played
Starline.
UCLA my freshman year.
I used to be a really big Chance fan.
Yeah.
I have to listen to it a second time to give it a like.
No, that album's phenomenal.
Okay, I'm gonna
I would also put that in contention with the Clips album for album of the year. One other album that I was actually listening to on the way here that plot twist has a very heavy country theme is Big X the Plug. His new album, I Hope You're Happy. A lot of country features on there, but it's like country hip hop mashup. That album is fire. I encourage everybody in here to listen to it. It's got some features that like I would never listen to these artists like on their own, but like that album is really good.
Like country, like Luke Combs or like.
I mean, is it Bailey Zimmerman?
I don't really know country.
Jelly Rolls on a song. Some woman named like Ella Langley, I think, is on a song, but they're all like country artists. I think there is a Luke Combs feature actually. So, but that album is really good. Unexpected, but I had heard good things about it and I listened to it. And so that's more of a like a hip hop country mashup. That album's really good. Freddie Gibbs and the Alchemists put out Alfredo 2. That album's really good. Like to me, it's just like, and I think it's no coincidence that a lot of these artists are like older artists, right? Like the Clips, I think, because the Clips are two brothers, right? Pusha T and Malice. I think Malice is like 52, right? And so like these are guys that have been around for a long time, but like they're putting out some of the best music out right now. I think, Chance has been around for a minute. Freddie Gibbs has been around for a minute. Ghostface Killer put out Supreme Clientele too. So it's just like, I think it's been a year of, to me, just like vintage hip hop. And when I say vintage, I mean like the hip hop that I listened to in high school. So like in the 90s, like that 90s era, just like gritty, kind of raw hip hop feel. Like I think it's been a good year for hip hop. Like, it started off slow, but it's picked up.
So you listen to that and then you put on the Gilded Age?
Yeah.
That's such a great mix.
I'm a Renaissance man. Yeah.
I like, okay, so you're watching the Gilded Age, White Lotus, because we're big fans of Carrie Coon.
Yeah.
What else?
The Netflix documentary on the Dallas Cowboys, the Jerry Jones documentary, that documentary is really good.
Yep.
I was surprised because to me, they managed to humanize Jerry.
Yeah.
Jerry's taken a lot of shit over the years for being the owner and the GM, making bad decisions, etc. But like I haven't finished it yet either. I think it's like 8 episodes. I'm on maybe episode 4, I think 3 or 4. But what it has done is shown like where Jerry's passion for owning and leading the Cowboys came from. And it goes into his backstory. Like, he played football at the University of Arkansas. They won a national championship. And like, when he talks about that time when he was playing football and winning that national championship, to see how emotional he gets and how like that experience basically changed him forever. Like, he says it in the documentary. He's like, every single one of those guys on that football team, we won that championship and we were changed forever. And he starts crying, right? And like, it's really poignant. And then he buys the team because like I think in some ways like trying to recreate that, like, and get that championship feeling again. But like, I think because the Cowboys haven't won a championship since the 90s. Like, in the 90s, they won 3 Super Bowls, nothing since then. So like literally like 30 years. And people are like, he's the problem. But like, when you see like how much he cares about
recognized brand in the world,
they're the most highly valued sports franchise on the planet.
Yeah, he's
which
great.
is crazy. More than the Yankees, more than the Lakers, more than the Dodgers. He bought the team for $130 million. Yeah. Their current valuation is $12 billion.
Yep.
So you can say whatever you want about him, because there's a lot of teams out there that have 0 championships. He has 3, and he has the most valuable franchise on the planet, and he made it a family business. Because in the documentary, the other thing he says is like, before I bought the team, he's like, I called up my kids and I told them, I'm only going to do this if y'all work with me. Because he had 2 sons and 1 daughter. And they were all like in their 20s. They knew nothing about running a sports team, right? And he did it. And they all work in that team to this day.
Yep.
Charlotte and his 2 sons, Steven, and I forget the other one's name. But like, so it like, to me, it painted him in a different light. So I think that show was really good. I'd recommend that show to anybody. And I do think right now it's a bit of a wasteland for television. Well,
it doesn't help that everything's 8 to 10 episodes and then you're done.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I need something else to watch.
I did get into season 1 of Severance, so I haven't finished it yet, but
great show. I just can't watch it. It's so sad.
It's very gut wrenching to watch that show. I will say that.
Brilliant performances, though.
It's such like not just the performances, but like the depiction of the mundanity that can occur with working in an office at times. It's like that shit. It's like, I'm like, damn.
Yep.
It's like spot on.
Yep. The fluorescent lights.
Oh my God. And just like you get punished, you go to the break room and like shit like that. Like it's so like, it's very good on a lot of different levels.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's too good.
It is.
I actually can't watch it.
Yeah.
I'm so upset.
It is. It is like, it's like, it's viscerally like gut wrenching watching that show.
Yeah.
Get too close to home?
Oh yeah.
Well, not for me, but
oh yeah, for me, 100%. That show emotionally is like what depression feels like, and I'm like,
I've worked in an office before, and so like it's just some of these. It was like it's crazy, like Milchek comes in, he's got the smile on his face, like, hey gang, like that type of shit.
SNL should really do a skit though where they do Severance but work from home edition. Like how do their innies come out? That'd be really funny.
I will say this though, a lot of shows on Apple TV are really good. Like
yep.
Dope Thief, that's with Brian Tyree Henry. That's a really good
I watched the first episode of that one, but I couldn't get into it.
It's based off a book. I kind of want to read the book now, but it's really good. Smoke, that just kind of ended. That's good. Studio, you guys talked about that, I think.
I like the Studio a lot.
You liked the Studio, but you didn't like the franchise, which I disagree with. I really liked
the HBO Max one. Yeah,
I liked that one because it was a more realistic workplace comedy. That's the one about the British AD. He's the first AD running around like the fake Marvel.
Yeah, they canceled everyone.
Yeah. I really liked it. There's also much more British humor, which is my style.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that. Oh, Rivals. I'll also recommend that. That's with it's on Hulu. It's set in the 80s with David Tennant. That's a really great show. Very bizarre. Okay. Very fun.
Anything on Apple TV is good in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think.
No, they do a great job.
Yeah.
I go back and forth on Smoke because it's just like, I haven't finished it yet. I go back and forth on it. Yeah.
Through, you're just like, stuff is just happening. But they wrap it up. They wrap it up good. Like, you're just like, stuff is happening at this point. But
and on one that really didn't get a lot of press from Apple TV that I really loved was actually directed by John Chu, who did the Wicked movie, but Home Before Dark, which was the true story of the 9-year-old. She was the youngest journalist to ever join like the National Journalism League or whatever. She like helped solve a murder in her dad's town and wrote her own little paper about it. Not little paper. She wrote a real newspaper on her own. It's a great murder mystery. It's 2 seasons. That's on Apple TV. That's very fun.
And then for me, tried and true Law and Order. And Law and Order
SVU.
Yeah.
Oh, and did you see My Mom Jane, her documentary about her mom?
I haven't seen the documentary yet. I'm aware of it, but I haven't watched it yet.
I recommend that. It was really sweet. I didn't really know anything about her life or her mom's life, but that was a very well done documentary. And lastly, anything you're reading or have read this year that has been helpful?
I mean, I always have like 10 different books that I'm in the midst of reading. I started reading The Parable of the Sower, the Octavia Butler book. It's kind of, I would say it's dystopian, but it's like we're living.
It's just real.
That's one that I'm reading. And then, The Myth of Being Normal, the Gabor Mate book. That one's really good. Actually, I recommend that to everybody. I haven't finished it yet, but it's really good. So that's more of like it's about kind of the human psyche and trauma and how we deal with trauma and how we can better deal with trauma, like stuff like that. But
so incredibly useful right now.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it's been a great season.
It has. I concur.
To season 2. Like, subscribe, and watch.
This podcast is brought to you by Adamson Ahdoot LLP. Hosted by Christopher Adamson. Produced by Lauren Henning and Chris Weigen. If you have thoughts or suggestions, email us at itspersonal@aa.law. The views, opinions, and statements expressed by guests on this podcast represent the personal perspectives of the individual speakers and do not constitute official positions of Adamson Ahdoot LLP or its attorneys, staff, or affiliates. Nothing discussed creates an attorney-client relationship, and the content is provided for general informational and educational purposes only. Always consult with a qualified attorney about your specific circumstances.